Good morning and welcome to the Father and Son podcast. I'm Jacob and this is my dad, Troy. Last week was a terrible week to be on vacation as a lot happened around the NFL. And starting with Drew Brees. Drew Brees retired after taking probably, I think, a couple months to decide that. Then free agency started and we'll get into all of that and more today, starting with the Saints. So with Drew Brees retiring, who will be quarterback one?
I think it's going to be Hill. That's my opinion. They were using Hill um, more at the when Breeze was injured last year, but I think it might be some of it might be decided in training camp too.
Yeah, I think that too. You know, you don't hand somebody $140 million over 4 years. I mean, so that deal is voidable. They can void that contract at any point, but still, you don't hand $140 million and not play a player.
Exactly, and not any player either. It's going to be more of a quarterback.
Right. I mean, but that same argument can go to Carson Wentz. You know, they handed him a huge extension and they ended up benching him.
Well, also when they handed him that big contract, he was actually playing somewhat good.
Right.
You know,
So this was a surprise for the Saints to extend somebody like Taysom Hill. Not saying that he's not a good player, but 140 million. We were just getting off of Dak being re-signed for 160, and we'll get into Dak in a little bit, but I think people should be more surprised about Taysom Hill than they are with Dak.
exactly.
But also with the Saints, um, they're so they released Quan Alexander, but they franchise tagged Marcus Williams and Emmanuel Sanders. They released, and he went to Bills. Speaking of the Bills signed Mitch Trubisky last week. I didn't even hear that he was released or that they weren't going to re-sign him. So that was a surprise to hear that he signed with the Bills. But yeah, that was a surprise. Um, and what do you think about that?
I think it's good for Mitch. I don't think he was getting what he needed in the with the Bears. You know, here you take a quarterback second pick, all overall, and um, they didn't meet. Either one didn't meet each other's expectations of what they needed. And I think new scenery and less pressure will be a lot better for Mitch.
But yeah, I hope that Mitch Trubisky can develop and maybe turn into a serviceable quarterback. Um, he's one of those guys right now that's the butt of the jokes of quarterbacks, and nothing he does will ever be taken serious. And I don't think that even a couple years ago when the Bears went to the division round
Mm-hmm.
again and lost, but ended up losing to Eagles that year. They still weren't getting recognition. It was still the defense.
I think Mitch has talent. It comes out. He just makes too many mistakes.
Right. And
He just throws too many interceptions. He's trying too hard. Um,
yeah.
so I think if with the right scenery and the right team, he could be a quarterback that can lead him and do good.
And this is good because this should give him time to develop. But, this brings up a big conversation in the Bears clubhouse. You know, so you let go of Mitch Trubisky. They still have Nick Foles, who they thought was going to be good for them. That didn't really end up doing much. And they bring in Andy Dalton. And a lot of people didn't like that signing.
I still don't know why Andy Dalton didn't why he went to the Bears.
Yeah, I think the Washington football team Um, they should. The Fitzpatrick move is probably more confusing than Andy Dalton, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Andy Dalton can be a serviceable quarterback. I think that's a good signing for the Bears. Hopefully, Andy Dalton can prove a lot of people wrong.
Dalton and Fitzpatrick are, both about the same.
Right.
So you can take one and put it in the other. Um, so, if,
Just Fitzpatrick doesn't, he has his moments. The
mhm.
the issue, if you look at his whole career, the reason why he has bounced from team to team and he has not been a franchise quarterback is because he's inconsistent. You sign him, and the reason you sign him is because the first 4 games he gives you freaking Hall of Fame numbers, and after that, it's just nothing.
Yeah.
So
Except last year, he did good in the last
he did fine with
at the end.
Miami,
Yeah.
which that's why he got a good deal. Um, but the Bears also lost Kyle Fuller, their starting cornerback, which was a surprise, I think, for a lot of people. But he ended up signing with the Broncos. Cowboys are losing their backup quarterback, and as of last year, their starting quarterback. But luckily, um, after like 2 boneheaded seasons, Jerry Jones finally extended Dak Prescott.
Right. Now, how were you feeling when the Cowboys wasn't doing anything um, the first little while on picking up things?
Well, I think any Cowboy fan, you know, that was a scary moment because all the rumors that he was going to go elsewhere,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Um, so Dak Prescott is special. Is he top 5 in the NFL? That's debatable, and you know
He's at
whatnot.
least in the top 10 in a
I
lot.
believe so, but so all that is debatable. But Dak Prescott is the best available quarterback there was.
Mm-hmm.
You saw what happened when Dak was not there. There was an immediate um, there was immediate feeling. Um, the whole team, I think, felt it when he got hurt. If you watch that game, just see the reaction of the team. You know, that is their leader and whatnot. So you can tell. So great job, Jerry Jones, re-signing Dak Prescott, and we mentioned it before, $160 million, and I think he deserves every penny.
And I like how they structured that. It's not going to hit the cap this year. It's like 22 million that's going to hit the cap this year.
Right,
A lot better than franchising them
right.
out, and so
Um, they lost Chidobe Awuzie. There is a lot of rumors and things of what they're going to do. Um, they have already added some pieces to their defensive lines. Um, but corner is a big issue they need to address, and I think they will in the draft. But
who are they meeting with?
so they're meeting with um, Malik Hooker, and they obviously um, so they signed Keanu Neal, which I think is a big signing. Um, he can play safety, obviously, but he's going to be playing weak side linebacker. And they're also meeting with his teammate, DeMonte Casey. They're meeting with him this week. I don't know exactly when, but they're also meeting with Malik Hooker. And I think, in my opinion, Malik Hooker would be a better signing. Former kicker for the Cowboys, Dan Bailey, was released by the Vikings. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yes, I did.
Um, so I think that's a huge free agent. Former Cowboy, also Brett Maher. is also a free agent. He got released from the Cardinals. But speaking of the Cardinals, they had a busy offseason. So they started off by signing J.J. Watt. You know, a lot of people thought he was going to go a lot of different places, whether that be Green Bay, whether that was
We were kind of
Pittsburgh.
hoping. We were kind of hoping that he would come to the Cowboys, and
But he ended up signing in Arizona, which still works. Arizona is a team that needs a Super Bowl, and these are three players that can get you a Super Bowl now. You know, Cardinals did not need another wide receiver, and AJ Green is a starting wide receiver. He is a number one receiver.
well, Cincinnati's number one receiver.
Right. And
You put that on the Cardinals with Hopkins and Fitzgerald.
right. And they also have Kirk, Isabella, and whoever else. You know, that is a scary wide receiver room. You know, this is going to be interesting to see the Cardinals maybe be in more discussions. I think they got left out a lot of conversations last year, even though they deserved some recognition.
Got a little overshadowed by New England.
Well, this free agency, yeah. But if any team is going to get overshadowed, it is going to be by New England. New England opened up their wallet to the whole free agency market. Starting off with Cam Newton, what do you think?
Cam Newton, he's a good quarterback, but I don't think he's going to be their answer right off the bat. I don't know if
Right.
that's. I think they're preparing for something else later on, and so it's.
Yeah. I think Cam Newton will be fine. You know, he has a lot to prove. He has shown to be good at times, but he really needs to be more consistent throwing. He is 31, around there. You know, you're an older quarterback. You're no longer able to move the way you used to. He can still run. I'm not saying he can't, but
But his body can't take it over the time like he used to.
right,
He needs to take in Belichick's offensive plays and be a little bit more of a pocket quarterback.
right. You need a team around you, and they definitely did that. Um, so they signed John Smith, and tight end John Smith, tight end Hunter Henry, linebacker Matthew Judon.
One problem with Cam Newton is he's not a quarterback that gets it right in your hands. He's
Right.
off, and so that's that's the big question on that.
But they also signed Kedrick Bourne. Then they got back Kyle Van Noy, who was a longtime Patriot and ended up going down to Miami for a year and went right back to Belichick. They got Jalen Mills.
Out of all those, I like Hunter Henry.
Yeah,
I think he's going to help them out a lot
right.
on their offense.
I like the Jalen Mills because this brings up a conversation for the Eagles. You know, just who do you have in your cornerback room? You know, yes, they have Darius Slay, but then who? You know, so it's um, it brings up a huge question. Like, not even just mentioning the Cowboys wide receivers. You know, you have the Giants who signed Kenny Galladay. They signed John Ross a third. They have a scary offense. The only question with the Giants is really Daniel Jones. But they're getting back Saquon Barkley, and they're adding all these new pieces. So this is a huge concern for Philadelphia. You get rid of Carson Wentz. You're paying that whole contract, pretty much, for Carson Wentz to play in Indianapolis, and you are starting a second-year player, which that's a question.
It's pretty sad when Wentz is getting paid more than Dak, or the Eagles are paying Wentz more than Dak is getting paid this first year.
Right. But
And he's
there's a
kind of
there's a there's a lot of questions. You have a first-year coach. You have a second-year quarterback. Who's their running back? Offensive line is getting old. They're letting go of Ertz. There's a lot of questions. You know, not saying that the Eagles can't play well, but this could be a rebuild.
that's what a lot of rumor is that
Right.
it's going to be a rebuilding season for him.
Somebody who is not rebuilding, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't think they really signed anybody new. Tampa Bay just kept everything in house.
Mm-hmm. They just got pieces back together.
Which, if you win a Super Bowl, the biggest concern is keeping the band together.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that they did that. They did fairly well,
If it's not broken, don't fix it.
right? They got Tom Brady locked down for I think another few years. I don't know if he's gonna play those few years, but they have him locked down for a few years. Um, then they franchise tagged Chris Godwin. I don't think they have given him a new deal yet. They re-signed Shaq Barrett when a lot of people hoped and wished that he would go elsewhere. And then they re-signed Levante David and Rob Gronkowski after flirting with free agency.
Yeah. Well, one day of flirting,
2 hours.
something like that.
I think he did. I think he did touch base with free agency and just talk
What
with
team
this.
wants me? Oh, okay. I'll stay
I
with the
bet you.
Bucks.
I bet you he got offers. Last year's competition, the Kansas City Chiefs, Patty Mahomes relieved I think 17 million. I think they freed up a good amount of money.
Yeah.
But biggest question with the Chiefs is that offensive line. You know, the same offensive line that failed them in the Super Bowl. So
Well, a
they
lot of that was because of the injuries. A lot of them
right,
were injured out.
but they ended up releasing Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz, two big names. Fisher being their former first overall pick a number of years ago, then Mitchell Schwartz being a big name when you consider right tackles. He is a unit, and he has been a really good offensive lineman. So that that was a really crazy move to me. So you have questions about your offensive line, and then you release probably the two best.
Yeah, but with Dooney coming in, that takes up one of those, and now they
Right.
just need to get one
So
more.
they signed Joe Thuney, who can play almost anywhere, the guard positions. He can play center, a little bit of left tackle, whatnot. Um, and then they signed tackle Kyle Long. So that will be, I think, pretty good for our offensive line when you consider the moves that they made. So going on, some new, a little bit more old, but the Rams. Um, Jared Goff was sent to Detroit for Matthew Stafford and a few picks. This year's third and 2022 and 2023's first round picks.
So who's going to benefit more out of that?
I think that Matthew Stafford is a better quarterback than Jared Goff. But here's the thing, Rams, you are giving up three draft picks, three big draft picks.
And the number one pick.
So I don't think that they have this year's first round pick. I think they traded that away. So they traded away a third. Then they traded away the next two.
Hmm.
So now you don't have a first round pick for the next foreseeable future, which first round picks, this is what you build your league off of and your team. And, you know, yeah, you can have the best corner, but the best corner could be in the draft in the next year. So that is a concern. And here's the thing, Jared Goff is 26, Matthew Stafford is 33. So how long do you think that you're getting Matthew Stafford? This is good for Matthew Stafford, in my opinion, but the age difference and the picks is really surprising to me.
I think it's almost like a Tom Brady move. Here you have the Rams that have one of the best defenses around, and an offense that is fairly structured. You put Stafford in there, he could do some good. You know,
I think this gives more eyes to Stafford's career. He's been in Detroit for over a
drafted.
decade.
Yeah, he was drafted by Detroit.
Right. But he's never won a Super Bowl. But we all just put that on the fact that he's been in Detroit, and just Detroit's not gonna win it, and whatever. He's been given excuses, and rightfully so, in my opinion. But this, I think, eliminates
A lot of
a
those.
lot of those excuses. It's
Mhm.
either, are you a great quarterback, or
Were you the problem?
right.
And that's the same thing that going back to Wentz a little bit. Is Wentz the problem, or was it the Eagles the problem? And so,
Yeah.
um, but I honestly think that Wentz has to go in and figure out what the problems, because he has some problems. You could see a lot of his mistakes. He has to go in and take credit for the mistakes that he has, the problems.
Matthew Stafford has a lot more to prove, I think. But Jared Goff, being the former number one pick, being sent to Detroit, isn't a good look for his career. I mean, I hope that things work out. I really do.
Well, I think that's going to be a rebuilding process a little bit there. You know, what do they have?
Right.
And you got the problems with Seahawks.
Right.
Not very many places where he can go now. Um, and then Green Bay, you have some questions. Rodgers was questioning his contract,
Right.
but I haven't heard much about that lately.
I haven't either.
And matter of fact, I haven't really heard much about Green Bay on the
Yeah, they haven't. They didn't. I don't
free
think they
agency
did
market.
much.
Um, but the two teams, th there's not a lot of things that they need to improve. The Seahawks need an offensive line, of course, but as far as receiving and their defense could be a little bit better. But Packers,
There's a lot of questions for Seattle, but what do you do? If you are the teammate of Russell Wilson, and he just says that you are the problem, and that he wants out. How does Russell Wilson lead that team
right?
when he's saying that threw everybody under the bus and wanted out, and it's
All the teams that he had picked to go to, they all done something, so he's not left with very many choices.
right. So that's a big QB concern. Russell Wilson is a big name in football.
Hmm.
Another QB concern is Deshaun Watson. That is probably the biggest story um, down in Houston. Um, Not just the legal disputes, but also with the team and not wanting to play for Houston. You know, now there's sexual allegations.
Hmm. He's painted himself in a corner.
You know, it's I hope that it's not true,
Right.
but
At the same time, they need to figure it out if it is or not.
yeah.
Um,
I'm sorry, but there's 9 women. You know,
yeah.
it's really hard to deny. I think that, you know, they tried. You know, the Texans added some pieces in free agency, and I think, you know, really wanted to, you know, to try and build a team. And now this comes out, but they did add um, Tyrod Taylor, who I think will be a good backup. Um, then they got Shaq Lawson in a trade. They signed former Raven Mark Ingram and Philip Lindsay, who came from the Broncos. And that was crazy to me last year. Melvin Gordon, he was with Chargers and had some contract disputes, and you know, a really good running back is being denied pay, and so he left and goes to Denver, to a team that already had a good running back, somebody who, you know, was proven, had a couple years with 1,000 yards, and I think that was a real big shocker. Um, so he leaves this year, goes to Houston, and so now Houston has a running threat, and they added to the offensive line. Washington football team signing Fitzpatrick. Um, they released Alex Smith, and you know, so the last year's comeback player of the year, you know, had that
He's out of a
injury.
job.
Right. You know, he had that terrible injury, came back and played multiple games, and didn't do too bad.
Yeah.
And obviously did good enough to get comeback player of the year.
So is his career done, or is someone else going to pick him up?
He has, I think, proven to people that he can play again. I think a lot of teams would want him to be a backup. I think he'd be a good backup, but I don't know if he's willing to come in and be a backup. I think a lot of teams would sign him. Some big news for basketball. LeBron James
The
out
king.
for at least 6 to 8 weeks.
So that's going to be huge.
Yeah. Lakers lost last night to Suns. Chris Paul gets his first triple double with the Suns. Um, but Suns look good. Chris Paul looked good. And I said that a long time, you know, that if the Suns could just get just get a good point guard, put that with Booker, so that Booker doesn't have to be the only one that's shooting a three. Warriors, Steph Curry, he had some lower back issues. He fell, um, fading away on a three, um, and hit his like tailbone. And so he was out. He's been out for the last couple of days, and that's really bad for Golden State. We saw last year what that team looks like without Steph, and we saw what happens when Steph comes back. You know, so hopefully he can come back soon. Baseball gets underway in a few days.
April 1st. We have 9 days.
Finishing up spring training. A lot of players eager to get ready, you know, get back into it.
Fans in the stadium.
Right. That is a big thing is with football, certain teams are allowing back full capacity. Cowboys being one of them, allowing every fan back in. A lot of teams doing a percentage, whatever that percentage is allowed in that state. I know Arizona's allowing back
25%.
25%.
I think that's what it was.
So obviously,
And it's supposed to build up as the year
right.
goes.
So case by case basis,
Hopefully, everything can stay improving here with this virus. And
right? And that's something to look forward to. With things opening back up, us getting a little bit more normalcy. Um, Hopefully, everybody can stay safe, and it is a big concern. That's a good thing to wrap up on, but great thing to see.
mm-hmm.
Um,
I'm excited.
I am too, and you bet yourself we're going to a game.
Yes.
It's a great thing to see. You know, we've been locked in quarantine for a
A year.
year,
Over
over
a
a
year.
year. So this is great. So that is gonna wrap up today's episode. We'll be back tomorrow, hopefully around the same time as you're seeing this. Um, Again, I am Jacob. This is my dad, Troy. Please consider sharing and liking. And that's it. Bye.